Greetings. This is Paul the Poke from paulthepoke.com, and welcome to This Week in Prophecy. So, got some things going on. Not as much has been going on in the previous weeks, but got a map here of the Middle East. We're going to also look into what would be Central Asia, Eastern Europe. First place we're going to go out of Moscow. This is Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov. And he makes the comment that Hitler was Jewish. And this got all kinds of run. And I didn't understand it. It's a silly thing to say, but yet everybody got all fired up about it. Lavrov's Jewish Hitler comments are latest manifestation of an old dangerous myth. Rumors about Nazi leaders' ancestry go back to the 20s, but are dismissed by Holocaust scholars. Plainly, the idea remains useful for some, including Putin. So this is interesting for a couple of reasons. One, I think it reflects the changing attitude of Russia toward Israel. And we do know from Ezekiel 38, and a lot of this today is going to be about Ezekiel 38. And specifically, the Lord came to me saying, "Son of man, set your face against Gog of the land of Magog." Now, for you folks who have been following for some time know that I'm of the opinion that Magog is modern-day Russia. Gog is the leader. May or may not be Putin. I don't know. But a leader of the land of Magog, or the Scythians, or modern-day Russia. Their attitude at some point is going to change toward Israel to the point, looking at verse 4, "I will turn you around, put hooks in your jaws, and bring you out with all your army, your horses, your horsemen in full armor, and a great company armed with shields, bucklers, all brandishing their swords. And they will have friends, modern-day Turkey, modern-day Iran, Libya, and arguably the Sudan, Ethiopia." So that remains to be seen. But what we're focusing on here is the attitude we are watching. I think we are watching Russia's attitude toward Israel change. And this fired up a lot of folks in Israel. And then Lavrov made this claim on Sunday in an interview with Italian television, arguing the fact that Ukraine's President Zelensky is Jewish does not contradict Moscow's claim that it had launched its invasion of the country to, quote, denazify it. And so the argument is, well, how in the world could a Jewish guy be responsible for the Holocaust during World War II? And I think that dovetails to what Israel will be looking for at some point in the future in their Messiah. And we all know the narrative. There will be an Antichrist or a false Messiah of the Jewish people. Now, at some point, that person's going to have to either lie or convince these folks, or he may actually have the chops to prove he's a Jew and he qualifies for their Messiah. So it's like, y'all better be careful over there. And I'll look at this quote right here. "And resulting Holocaust denial, even blaming Jews for their own suffering, and that millions more during World War II is a convenient way to distract from the crimes perpetrated by the Nazis and their collaborators." Well, that's true. But at some point, we know a bad guy's coming. He may even be Jewish, or he'll lie about his Jewishness. But there's going to be even a bigger Holocaust than what took place during World War II against the Jewish people during the tribulation. Something to think about. Where is the quote down here? Yeah. The idea is dangerous because of its logical conclusion. That would mean that a Jewish individual was the architect of the mass murder of 6 million Jews and millions more. Well, maybe not back in World War II. I'm not here to debate Hitler's Jewish chops. That's not the point. But at some point in the future, a really bad guy is going to come along who's going to convince the Israeli people he's their Messiah. And he may or may not be Jewish or have Jewish ties, or he may lie about it. But I just don't see the Jewish people turning to a Gentile for their leadership. Now, they might. I mean, lots of crazy things are going on. I mean, I've kind of always been of the opinion he's probably not going to be a Jew, but he would lie about it. You know, plenty of deceit going on, manipulation in this current time. Lots of things make sense. Lots of things are plausible. Lots of speculations out there, but nonetheless, it's definitely worth looking towards. You know, and clearly the Jewish people, the Jewish state of Israel, is willing to look for other people for their answers in their leadership, and I think this happened today. First Muslim sworn in Israel's Supreme Court. Judge Khaled Kaboub has become the first Muslim appointed to Israel's Supreme Court. So, you know, I wouldn't be married to any of your theories or my theories or any of these theories about how all this is going to go down. But what we do know is at some point there will be a guy who convinces the Jewish people and they accept him as his Messiah. Will he have Jewish ties? He's going to have to be able to show that to some extent, I would think. Now, he could lie about it, or he actually may be a Jew. I don't know the answer to that. But you can see right here with this move, you know, the nation of Israel is willing to look outside their Jewishness in leadership in their country. And the other piece of this, you have Russia, who is willing or appears to be turning its attitude negatively toward Israel. And we know that's promised, Ezekiel 38. And we know a bad guy's coming. It's Daniel talks about it. The prophets talk about it. Rough times are coming. Now, who knows when? You know, how far are we? I don't know. I know we're one day closer today than we were yesterday. And again, you know, the idea of Russia turning toward Israel, this was sent to me by Checkmate. This was, 5 days ago. I-24 News out of Israel. Hamas leaders meet Russian officials in Moscow. And my understanding, this was an emergency meeting made in haste. Felt the need to go to from the Gaza Strip up to Moscow. Tuesday night, delegation of Hamas leaders arrived in Moscow. You say Moscow, I say Moscow, to hold important talks. I've heard them also called emergency talks with the Russians. And then this tweet came out. Hamas delegation just arrived in Moscow for talks with Russians to discuss Israeli attacks on holy sites. That'd be the Al-Aqsa Mosque, churches, worshipers, Russian support for the Palestinian cause. And then there was this quote, Putin assures Palestine of full support following Israeli attacks on Al-Aqsa Mosque. So, you know, again, Russian attitudes toward Israel continue to change. And need to pay attention to that. You know, then we have this from Jason Brodsky. I think this is from Israel Alma. And it's a report about Russian deployment in Syria. Intervention launched this. Now, Russia first came into Syria back in late September 30th, 2015. Putin moved troops in to prevent a collapse of Syrian Arab Republic. Yes, the Syrian Arab Republic under Bashar al-Assad. He's worried about ISIS and other rebel forces. 500,000 people are estimated to have died in the Syrian civil war, and Russia has moved in throughout the country over the past almost 7 years now. You know, they have air bases and naval bases, multiple air bases now. Istamo, Hamamin, Hama, Metza, and this all ties into Jeremiah 49, Hamath, and then upwards around Aleppo. This is effectively Jeremiah 49, things coming from the north down ultimately into Damascus. And we know what Isaiah says about Damascus. The burden of Damascus will cease to exist as a country or as a city at some point in the future. Now, at the height of this, it was estimated that Russia had 65,000 troops in Syria at some point. But with everything taking place in Ukraine, that is now estimated to be down to about 10,000. So something to keep an eye on. And again, Israel's down here in the south and west of the map. And there's a Russian air base just south of Damascus. Also, the UN and friends in Russia are right there on the Golan Heights border in Quneitra as well, which is this little pocket. I think you can just barely see it here on the Golan Heights. So Russia is there. Their presence is not as big as it was, say, 5-6 months ago with everything taking place in Ukraine. And we do know at some point, again, according to Ezekiel 38 and 39, they're going to move back in. And they're described, you and all your troops, many peoples with you, will go up advancing like a thunderstorm. You will be like a cloud covering the land. So there's going to be a bunch of them. And the coalition, it's developing. It's not there yet. Let's say Iran's pretty much on board. Turkey's still kind of straddling the fence. It won't surprise me if we get, Russia steps in to support Lebanon. And Checkmate's talked about this quite a bit. Attitudes are probably going to have to change in Jordan, to where they would be more agreeable to allowing Russia and friends to move in. So effectively having Israel surrounded on all of these fronts. But who knows when, but we know it's going to happen. This happened earlier this week, actually yesterday. Senior administration official on the U.S. and G7 actions to impose additional severe costs for Putin's war against Ukraine, more sanctions. Now, how big of a deal this is, hard to say, but they did release some more sanctions, cutting off Russia from leading financial centers of the world. New York, London, Tokyo's involved, so is Switzerland and Singapore. Tokyo is part of the G7, so still waiting for 3 more nations, for that foundation of that, from Daniel, 10 iron and clay toes, and the 10-horned beast from Revelation. That has yet to develop. And this is interesting too, down here below. The EU is now on the cusp of joining the US, Canada, and the UK in cutting off trade. And they're talking about oil trade. That's how Putin, oil and gas, that's how he makes his money. And that's the money he needs to help fund his troops with weapons as well. Other details, U.S. announcing today that U.S. advertising dollars, broadcast technology, video cameras, microphones, equipment for sound will no longer be available to the 3 most watched state-owned or controlled Russian TV stations that enable Putin's propaganda machine. So we're going to cut off some access to equipment. I'm sure they've got their own equipment. Okay. After today, no U.S. company can be in the business of funding or supporting the disinformation machine that masks the truth of Putin's barbaric invasion behind lies and deceit. EU is moving in tandem with additional controls on chemical, for example, that feed directly into Russia's military-industrial complex. And this is going to affect their ability to produce and build tanks, I think is some of it. So, also cutting 2,600 visa restrictions due to ongoing human rights violations and atrocities committed by the Russian military. And that's pretty much it. If you want to read the rest of these details, it's a Q&A. I didn't find anything of any interest, but some of you folks might. Here is the link to it, whitehouse.gov briefing room. You can read the actual thing instead of take our press and their word for it. So again, Russia hurting for financial resources, and then so's Turkey. I mean, both these countries are struggling, and we know Ezekiel 38. That's why they go into Israel, to take livestock. Have you come to capture plunder? Have you assembled your hordes to carry away loot? Make off with silver and gold, cattle, goods, seize great plunder. That's natural gas out in the Mediterranean. I mean, so both Turkey and Russia will eventually go into Israel for financial reasons to take resources from Israel to steal it. So Bulgaria, get a map back here real quick. Bulgaria is looking for natural gas, and they're looking to Turkey instead of Russia. So the issue is Turkey boasts direct pipeline connections to Bulgaria and Greece, both of which could be used to supply Bulgaria with natural gas. Now, Turkey's kind of in a pickle because they don't want to upset Russia. And Russia is Turkey's biggest gas supplier. And do they want to help a company who's crossways with Russia to make a quick buck to be the middleman? So it's kind of like Turkey saying, okay, we'll take this gas from Russia and then we'll sell it to Bulgaria for a little profit. Well, and do they want to risk Russia cutting off? Does Turkey want to risk getting their gas supply from Russia, have it cut off? So clearly, March 31st, Vladimir Putin announced he described unfriendly countries should pay for their gas they buy from Russian company Gazprom in rubles, trying to bypass EU sanctions and help support the Russian currency. And by the way, the Russian currency is now propped up to a level that it's in a stronger position than it was before the invasion. Russia is selling oil and gas to China, and they have a gas deal with Iran. So it would appear to some degree that's been somewhat effective, in that they've been able to prop their currency up in a position of strength as compared to previously. See what Erdogan does with this. Who knows? And lastly, we're going to close. I know a lot of you folks are very interested in anything Jared's doing. Kushner's still in the news. Now, Kushner's hanging out here with his buddy there in Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman. And he met with him, Kushner, to invest Saudi funds in Israeli startups. It's a report, allegedly. So he's taking Saudi money. He's the conduit, Kushner is, and he's going to invest in Israeli startup companies. Now, as you guys know, Saudi Arabia is not a member of the Abraham Accords. But, the Saudis want a piece of the action in Israel. And according to the report, Kushner and his team warned Saudi officials they could lose out on access and opportunities in the, quote, Silicon Valley of the Middle East, and that would be Israel, to states in the region that had joined the Abraham Accords. Saudi Arabia could also open its economy to Israeli businesses via work with Kushner. Jared making some deals, making some financial deals, the go-between, the Saudis and Israel. We'll just keep an eye on Jared. Kushner has also pitched Affinity Partners, now that's his group, Affinity Partners, to other Arab and majority Muslim states, including the UAE, Qatar, and Indonesia. And the UAE is a member of the Abraham Accords. Qatar and Indonesia do not have diplomatic relations with Israel or are not a member of the Abraham Accords. So let's see. The Saudis' Public Investment Fund expressed concerns about the intent to invest $2 billion in affinity partners, including the inexperience of the affinity fund management. Well, we talked about it, but now it appears we've got confidence in affinity, and Jared Kushner will be our go-between. So interesting things happening, as always, in and around the Middle East as they relate to prophecy. And again, we're looking at Russia changing their attitude toward Israel. Israel clearly being open to whoever to lead their state, including a newly sworn-in Muslim to their Supreme Court. Troops are diminishing in Syria. Russian troops are diminishing in Syria because they're too occupied up in Ukraine. More sanctions on Russia. Turkey continues to play their kind of fence riding situation with the Russians, trying to make a few bucks on the gas trade, but at the same time not trying to irritate the Russians. Who knows? Russia may have some back deal with the Turkey. You sell them, then we want a cut of your cut. I wouldn't doubt it. Money talks. And speaking of money talks, we'll close there with Kushner, MBS, old picture with the Donald from 2017. So appreciate you guys following along. Hope this finds everyone doing well. Talk to you later. Catch you again. Thanks. Bye.